Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegades Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Tom, do you ever have one of those mornings? By the way, it's Thursday. Do you ever have one of those mornings where it starts earlier than you expected and it's already like real before you even get that first cup of coffee or whatever in you?
Well, I'm not a coffee drinker, so pretty much every day would be a long time before I would have that cup of coffee in me. And sure, absolutely. There are days I wake up that I'm like, I can't go back to sleep, so I have to get up. Or that I know I have to get up.
No, this is one where things start coming at me early.
You know, there's a way to stop that.
Yes, I know.
Because I'm imagining they're coming at you via your phone, correct?
I have my phone set not to take any calls till 7:30, and today 7:30 came early.
Fair enough.
So it happens. That's part of being a renegade in some ways, that it's not linear. It's not the 9 to 5 that it can be, but it isn't always the 9 to 5. You know, yesterday by 3:30, I was reading my book on the porch and didn't work much for the rest of the afternoon. This morning, it just came early. And I think that's one of those things that you have to adjust to, and just, okay, you do the work when the work needs to be done. And you work on the weekends. I know you do. I've worked on the weekends. You work in the evenings. You do what you got to do.
Well, it's a choice that you make. You could set that phone to not receive any calls until
ever.
8. Well, there's that. You could take the phone and put it not in your bedroom so that until you get up, you can't access it. Those are choices that you could make.
Yes.
And the beauty is you have the ability to make that. No one else is making it for you.
Right.
Your boss isn't saying you have to keep your phone by your bedside because if I need you, I'm going to call you. And you have to answer. That is a different.
Although your clients and customers can also have that same effect. Hey, I need you now. And depending on where they are in that customer relationship, that can influence things.
And again,
but we are way off track.
No, you're talking about your morning. Is that off track?
Okay. No, not at all. So, hey, so it's Thursday. And before I forget, tomorrow morning, Tom, we have to do this at 7 a.m. Eastern time, not 8 a.m. It's that one Friday a month.
So tomorrow morning, you're going to have to get up even earlier.
I will be in a better place tomorrow morning.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm hoping my headache goes away. I never get headaches, and I've had a headache for the last 20 hours.
That's not good.
No. I think it's weather.
Get rid of those.
I think it's the weather. I think it's the storm front. I'm hoping.
It is, I think, the first day of fall, right?
I thought yesterday was.
Oh, so I'm a day behind. Okay, so it's fall.
So if you're coming for the latest information, no.
We're not always there.
We'll reframe the show. It's not today's antidote. It's yesterday's news.
Sure. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us via our podcast or joining us live on Facebook or YouTube. Thanks for being a part of our show this morning. We all week have been talking about how renegades roll. Actually, we've been talking about it for 2 weeks. This week, we've been focused a little bit more on how renegades roll within their role, R-O-L-E. And today, I have to say, I've been looking forward to this day all week. The role today holds a very special place in my heart. Today, we will be talking about nonprofit professionals and how they roll as renegades. And before we get to that, we always start our morning off outside of our welcoming, saying hello, with our celebrations. So we know you're not celebrating about the fact that you had to get up early and you got to watch the sunrise. Yep. What are you celebrating today, Bob?
I am celebrating that yesterday afternoon I had a discussion with one of our Renegade Success Network members, and something clicked for her. And she went from, I don't know how I can do this, to, how many people have you shown this to? What are the results like? It started to all work. One of the ways that we build our network, and talking through how to do that in a different way than most people would do. Instead of calling 100 people, really focusing on key people and talking to them in different ways. And it clicked. And it was just so exciting because we've spent hours over the last 3 months talking through it, walking through it. And this person was reluctant to ask people for business. And we finally figured out a way yesterday to make it so that she could ask for business without having to say, I want you to do this thing with me. And so it was a huge success for me. Nice. Huge success for her. I was just lucky enough to facilitate it.
Congratulations. I think that I saw I might not have been in the group, might have been, I know who that was. And she was taking the opportunity to celebrate last night. So good for her and you.
Oh, I did not see that.
Well, she posted something about a favorite beverage and asking what other beverage other people were drinking. So I have yes. And unfortunately for me, Tom, she promised to do something by today, or else I would get a lot of said beverage, a very nice bottle of said beverage. But she texted me last night to say, hey, no beverage for you. I did it. So I'm doubly excited that if that's what motivated her, that's great, because sometimes it's what motivates us, right? I mean, knowing what makes you do the thing you're uncomfortable with is sometimes, maybe many times, more valuable than doing the thing. Knowing how I know what motivates me, and there are times that I use it, like with you with the book. If you said, hey, I'm going to get a chapter done every week, and if I get the chapter of the book done by Friday at 5 p.m., I will do this thing on Saturday, whatever that is. Yeah. Well, I think that's the beauty of celebrating, is that, one, you can celebrate what you either have done or have coming up. You can also determine this is how you will celebrate once you complete something like that. And I think that it's such a powerful way to put yourself in the right mind space, the right position to find ways to keep moving forward and not being stuck. So kudos to you, kudos to your client or our member, and awesome way to start the day.
Yeah. Thank you. And you, what are you celebrating today, Tom?
So I'm celebrating that I'm starting a new project with a new client. We had a great conversation yesterday. It's a fascinating nonprofit organization that celebrates history and helps school children better understand and celebrate. They do some really cool things. They were telling me the story of a student, how some students will take individuals who participated in, let's say, World War II, and may have died when we invaded France, or may have died at Pearl Harbor. And the students go back and do like a little research project about an individual. I think so often all we hear about is X number of people were killed at Omaha Beach during the invasion of Normandy. Doesn't say a whole lot. I mean, it says a lot, and it is not, people become a number. So-and-so was one of how many killed that day. And the students have an opportunity to really better understand who that person was and make them not seem, at least for a day, not like a number, that they're an actual person who they are. So and then they do a lot of cool things. So I'm going to help them with some strategic planning, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to do that. One, because it's a really cool nonprofit in the state of Maryland, and they do a lot of really neat things and I'm kind of a history buff, so I'm excited.
Awesome. I love that. That's cool. Congratulations.
Yes. And what are we celebrating with the world today, Bob?
Tom, this is a big one. I'm glad that it came up. Sometimes I forget this, but this is National Great American Pot Pie Day. That's right, pot pie. You remember pot pies, right? Those little things
Not
you put in the
fondly,
tin.
but yes, I remember them.
Really? You're not fond of them? Oh, a beef pot pie, a chicken pot pie. Mmm. That nice
Cheese
little
and
crust on the
vegetables
top.
in a pie.
I think
Kind
they're
of like
delicious.
fruit on dessert.
I was gonna say. I was going there, and you got there quicker than me.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I don't believe that it's a dessert with fruit on it. We had that discussion a long time ago, so we don't need to revisit that.
But it is National Great American Pot Pie Day, so celebrate accordingly.
Are you going to have a pot pie today?
I have not had a pot pie in maybe a year. I might have a vegan one if I can find one. But
look at you, vegan ice cream, vegan pot pie. Are you changing your whole lifestyle?
No, just where I can.
Okay.
Trying to avoid dairy.
Got it.
So to avoid dairy, vegan helps a lot.
What does that have to do with dairy? And there's no dairy in pot pie, is there?
Yeah, if you get chicken pot pie, there'll be cream.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. All right.
Yeah. Little lesson for you. So Tom, I know you're at the edge of your seat. This is near and dear to your heart. So you want to kick this one off?
Sure. We talk about how Renegades roll, and today we're going to talk about nonprofit professionals. We've already talked about entrepreneurs, small business owners, and organizational leaders. So if that's something that resonates with you, go back and listen to Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday's episode. Numbers 408, 409, and 410. This is 411. Maybe this is 412. I don't know. I shouldn't have gone down that path because now I can't remember. Anyhow, I think, when I think about nonprofit organizations, I think we think about all the good that they do. And I think that's usually the first thing that comes to mind. I think what sometimes gets lost is the person who comes up with that concept, because almost all of these organizations are founded by someone who stepped back and said, I see where I can step in and make a difference. And I want to create the pathway for how that difference is going to happen. And, it's amazing when people choose to do that, because you could ask almost 99% of the nonprofit organizations out there, and their leaders are not making tons of money, maybe not making anything. And yet they are still willing to do what they believe is in the benefit of the community that they serve. And, to me, that is, there may not be anything, well, I don't know, small entrepreneurs kind of that way too, but it is a true renegade person, who wants to step out. And I think the challenge is that they run into many of the same challenges, sorry to use the same word twice, as small business owners. That was one of the things I discovered about 2 years ago, was the challenges that nonprofits face that I was dealing with on a regular basis are similar to the ones small business owners and entrepreneurs face, and that they don't have the resources, and they're always trying to, balance that. Here's the thing I'm really passionate about. For a small business owner, it's the work they do. As it is for a nonprofit leader, it's the cause that they're trying to help. And here are all the other things that I need to do that I don't necessarily understand. For a nonprofit leader, they are so passionate about the way they serve, the programs they run, the information they provide, the services they provide. Their challenge is all the rest of it, because they have to generate revenue, fundraise to be sustainable. And it's probably one of the largest challenges they have. They also have to find, manage, and support volunteers and board members. Again, something that's for someone who's very passionate about programming.
We lost you, Tom. Tom will be back. I can almost guarantee it. But in the meantime, let me share
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're back. Okay. You're still frozen, but can you hear me? There you are. You're back. No, you just said crap. That's funny. You back, Tom? Tom doesn't know he's here, but I will keep going. So Tom was talking about the role of nonprofit professionals. And I was blessed enough about a year and a half ago to have lunch with someone who is a nonprofit professional, a mid-level person in an organization. And I was asking her about her work. And she was going through and she was describing the challenges that she had. And she was describing the joys that she had. And in my book, the challenges far outweighed the joys. And I just all of a sudden I said, why would you do this? And she said, because it changes lives. And that was her motivating force. And so many nonprofit professionals aren't motivated by money because that's not the pathway to riches for most people. They're not motivated by being the most popular person because many of the nonprofits, you mention them, it's like, who cares about that? That's such a minor thing. I don't even know what that is. How could you possibly support that? But to that nonprofit professional, it becomes their passion. I don't know if you noticed, Tom, I worked for a nonprofit about, almost 20 years ago.
Did not.
And we dealt with homeschooling. We sold homeschooling curriculum. And it was interesting how we were constantly working. You're constantly trying to fill the coffers in a way that a for-profit business doesn't have. And everyone says, oh, you're a nonprofit, you don't have to pay taxes, all that stuff. Yes, there are some advantages potentially there, but those advantages only accrue when you start to bring in money. When the money isn't there, it doesn't really matter what your tax advantages are. And so many nonprofits really have to work to bring in the revenue. And they're looking for grants, they're looking for donors, it's not an easy path. And that to me is another part where they match up to small business owners. You're constantly looking for that next customer. For a nonprofit professional, you're constantly trying to figure out how can we get in front of more people in the hopes that you get in front of 100 people and one of them goes, oh, I know that. Yes, I have a cousin who had that, or I had a sister who had, or, oh, I didn't know you guys were, oh, that'd be so great for my community. And that is the challenge that I think for nonprofit professionals. They really don't know where the money is coming from. And I've seen, I have a friend who's working with a nonprofit right now, and they're waiting to see if they get funding for the next year. They've already planned out next year. They've already made commitments to next year. But if a funding source dries up, 90% of their funds are out the window.
Sure. I mean, and some of them are, there are grants that you can't apply to year after year. You can only apply to them every other year or every third year. I was talking with someone, a leader of a nonprofit the other day, and they had a longtime donor who was very supportive of the organization and had given them, obviously had a lot of resources, $500,000 every year for about 8 years until they decided that they were changing their priorities. And, that kind of a hit for a small to medium-sized nonprofit is huge.
Yeah.
And, now you're talking about eliminating programs, probably getting rid of some staff, or finding other means to step in and do it. And so I think it's a constant, it's just a situation where you are always looking for resources while also trying to solve problems. And
sounds like being a renegade.
Absolutely.
And that's why if you're trying to figure out, this is why we're highlighting this week, these things, because the 4 categories that we've described, almost every business and every nonprofit falls into. So you fit into one of those 4, but they are very similar because in all 4 cases, we're talking about renegades. We're talking about people who are passionate about solving a problem, whether it's eliminating breast cancer, whether it's funding diabetic research, whether it's helping people use clean water in a for-profit environment, whether it's making sure people have more ice cream flavors at the beach. Whatever it is, they're all things that people are passionate about. Very few people are renegades if they're not passionate about something. That's the common thread So if you have passion for something and you're out there at times feeling like you're tilting against windmills, you're probably a renegade.
Look at you bringing in Man of La Mancha references. Impressive.
Little Don Quixote.
I think the other thing that they have in common is they don't see a solution, or they haven't found a way for a solution that they desire or that they believe is what's real. And so they have an idea of this is how we could create our own unique pathway. There's a cool organization locally that I did some work with that supports families who have children dealing with cancer. And what I love about it is they realize that they don't have the resources to solve cancer. What they do is they can provide some resources to help make the lives of those people dealing with it easier. Simple things that we don't think about, like, it might be difficult to get to your treatments, as I'm sure you realize. And if you don't have someone who's there who can drive you, how are you going to get your treatments? And so they provide Uber funds that will get people back and forth from their treatments. And so it's those little things that, it's amazing what organizations like the American Cancer Society or the large organizations that are trying to really eliminate this huge issue that we have in the world. And then there are the smaller ones who know that's not the solution that they can provide. And they know that while those organizations are doing this significant work, they have an opportunity to find their niche and provide the work that they think is going to make a difference. And I think, anyone who has benefited from a nonprofit organization's work, whether
we have all benefited from the work of nonprofits.
Oh,
there is no way you could live your life without some nonprofit affecting you in some small or big way.
I agree. And I think it's funny. I tell nonprofits that all the time. I usually, anytime I do something with them, I thank them, whether it's the board, whether it's the people who work there, they're volunteers. Because if we had to pay for all the services that nonprofit organizations provide, our taxes would be unbelievable. And so I think the service that they provide to the community and to individuals is incredible. And I think that finding ways to recognize them, whether as renegades or just recognize them for the work they do, I think is time well spent. And, that's why I was excited that we were going to spend some time talking about this today.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just thinking while you were saying that, among the things that have affected me in my life, watching Sesame Street when I was a little kid.
Sure.
I listened to a lot of
you just showed your age there, by the way.
I listened to a lot of public radio, a lot of music on public radio stations that would not be commercially popular. It's all around us. And I think that's one of the things that when you talk to people in the nonprofit world, they understand that. They're like, that touched you in some way. That touched you in some way. I was looking a month or so ago. There was a drive in my community in Baltimore where they were getting book bags for students, outfitting them. It was a nonprofit, and they were outfitting them with things that I assumed every kid had. Pencils, pens, eraser, other stuff, markers, paper, notebooks. There's something that, who would have thought that you would create a nonprofit to do that kind of thing? Because everyone can go do that. It's not that expensive. But they found there was a huge need in the community. And so they plugged it. And I think that's the interesting thing to me about all these nonprofits is they find little niches that in an ocean of opportunity, they find this one really small area and really focus in on it and make a huge difference in that small area. So giving one elementary school 82 backpacks full of supplies. You'd say, well, that's not really a nonprofit. That's not a big deal. That's 82 families that are changed profoundly. And someone had the foresight, someone had the passion, someone had the wherewithal to figure out a pathway to get all those donations. And Tom, you've done it. It's not like people just jump out and give you money. It doesn't work that way. You have to find the messaging, find the people that it resonates with. You have to figure out what they're looking for. It's all the same things that businesses go through step by step. It's just in their world, they're looking for donors or sponsors or volunteers, but it really is a one-to-one relationship.
Absolutely. And I think the challenge is that, the same challenge that business owners have. How do you find the language to have those conversations? Because yes, is it difficult to go up and ask somebody for money? Yes. Depending on how you ask. Is it difficult to call someone up on the phone and having them consider working with you or taking advantage of your service?
Yes, it is.
And when you change the language that you use, it's different. I mean, one of the things I always talk about, and I think it's the same for business, so what's your story? Tell your story to someone. People are really interested in that. And they hear the story and they're like, huh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? Okay, yeah, sure. I'm happy to tell you more. Let me tell you about these people who we impacted and how it made a difference. Let me tell you about how my service changed someone's lives. And then once they're engaged, it's amazing how often people will just say, well, how can I help? Or, how can you help me with my insurance? How can you help me with the car that I have that's not fixed? It's all the same. And then they have asked you to tell them how they can help.
Yep.
And the challenge is that people forget that's happened. And then they think, oh man, well, I don't want, well, maybe they could volunteer that. Yeah. One of the ways you can help is make a gift that's personally significant to you. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. And I would say, Tom, to anyone who's watching or listening to this and going, wow, that sounds really simple, I should try that. We'd love to talk to you about how that can work, because that's something Tom and I are really passionate about, is helping people invite that from you instead of you saying, hey, I want to cut your grass, getting them to say, hey, what would it look like if you cut my grass? That's a big difference. And it makes the discussion much more powerful because, like Tom said, once they ask you, now you're in a real discussion. You're not selling them. You're talking about the fit and is it a good fit? And that's a game changer. You've seen it. I've seen it. We're seeing it with the people we're working with, that it just changes the whole paradigm and it deepens a relationship. It becomes not just a transaction that the next person comes and says, I'll cut your grass for $5 less. It becomes, no, I really like Bob. He's, I just love him because he explained to me that he does this with his mower and he only comes when I want him to come. And all these things that the customer is scripted that you're able to tell the customer, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. And that's what Tom and I are really trying to do. So Tom, what's your one thing today? Dun, 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 dun.
Well, I think my one thing about how Renegades roll as nonprofit professionals is that whether you're the executive director or you're the marketing person or the fundraiser or the programmatic person is, remember that you have a sphere of excellence. And it doesn't always cover all the things that you have to do. I think my one thing about them is that they hopefully try to understand that they don't have to do it all. Mm-hmm. Sadly, I think so many people think they do. I was talking with one the other day where they were talking about 90-hour work weeks. And I said, well, you realize that's a choice, right? Well, no, we've got to do this. Still, it's a choice. Maybe one of the things you could work on is how do you not have to believe that 90-hour work week is what it is? And I think real renegades start to develop that process. And so I think that as a nonprofit professional, you have the opportunity, just like anyone else, to choose to be a renegade and choose how you are going to do the work that you so passionately want to do. And I think that makes the opportunity for nonprofit professionals to see themselves as a renegade very different. I think they already do in some ways, because they are doing something that no one else had considered, to make a difference somewhere else and do it the way that they wanted to do it, that they felt was going to be most effective for the people they serve. And now I would just encourage them to continue down that path and understand that there are also ways to run your organization, to lead your professional life doing it differently. And since you've already made that step once, there's an opportunity to make it another one so that you don't run into the burnout, overwhelm, frustration that so many turnover. I mean, turnover rate in nonprofits, especially among fundraisers, 18 months is the standard. And I think that that's, if there's one thing that if we could change, that would be one of the ones that I would change. So
it's interesting because many small businesses don't make it to 2 years.
Correct.
They spin out, and you can, the parallels there as well. And I think what happens, what I was going to say is, you don't have to do it alone. It's okay to seek help. If you understood all the mechanics of fundraising, of budgeting, of marketing, of promotion, of managing employees, if you could do all 5 of those things, you are a unique human being. Because often, just like a small business owner, just like an entrepreneur, you come at it from passion and have to find your way. And I think seeking help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. It doesn't mean that your passion is any less. It doesn't mean that what you're trying to do is any less. It just means that you realize this is an area where I'm just not strong. And for me to accomplish my passion mission, I've got to find a way to do this. So I've got to figure out a way to do grants. I mean, I've talked to a number of people like, yeah, I would love to apply for grants, but I don't know how to do it. So they don't apply for grants. And if they had applied for grants, they'll tell you, oh, there's 6 grants I know I could qualify for, but I've never done a grant. Well, why don't you hire a grant writer? Why don't you go to a workshop? Well, I should know this. That's the single worst phrase, I think, for any renegade.
Or I don't have time.
Yeah, those two. I should
agree.
know this. We could do a whole week on that, couldn't we, Tom? Phrases that renegades should never say. Hey, I like that. And I want to remind you, Tom, and remind our listeners and viewers, tomorrow is going to be our first edition of Discoveries of the Week.
Yes.
So make sure that graphic, Tom, reflects that. Discoveries of the Week.
Not a weekly wrap up.
Nope.
I have to change my whole thing.
Weekly wrap up is gone. So sorry. I like Discoveries of the Week. Dun, 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 dun.
Are you going to do that tomorrow?
I will.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us today for this episode of today's Antidote. We hope that you enjoyed it, found value in it, and that our one thing will help you somewhere either now or future opportunities to make a difference. Thanks to all the nonprofit professionals out there who are making a difference. We appreciate everything that you do. So if you enjoyed this, please feel free to share it. If you are listening to the podcast, like, subscribe, tell a friend. We're trying to continue to grow so that more and more people can be impacted, not only by what we have to say, but what others have to say as well. So if you are watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please feel free to leave a comment. Share your one thing in the comments, and we know that it will also impact others. You can also become a part of our community by joining the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. It's easy to do. Just go to Facebook and search for Ring of Renegades. Now, it is a private group. Bob loves it when I say that, because we're trying to create a community where people can have conversations about the things that they are struggling with and the things that are going really well. They can celebrate their successes and also get support around the things that they're challenging. So to join, you just have to ask to join and tell us why you're a renegade, and you can become a part of our growing community. So we hope that we will see you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7. I was like, oh, I know this. I'm going to do it right. And I messed up. 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Embrace the renegade in you.
I love that.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.